Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Coleman, one of your hosts here at Florida Aviation Network, and we're broadcasting live and in the clear here in the terminal building of Sebring Regional Airport for the U.S. Sport Aviation EXPO 2019. We're here every year, and we always enjoy getting out to see the people, see the new things coming up in sport aviation, and talk to some very, very entertaining people. We have a lot of people here, and everybody has something to do with aviation, and we're here to educate, innovate, and aviate. Not too much aviating going on this morning because the weather was a little bit sour, but we call that liquid sunshine here in Florida. So it gives us time to do some ground training. It gives us a chance to meet some of our interesting guests, like the gentleman we have here to my left, Mr. Abner Aust.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to meet you, Abner.
Nice to be here.
And I'm going to call you Colonel. Is that?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Colonel, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you look like a spring chicken. You've been running around here. Look like you're like 25, 26-year-old.
Well, I've always taken good care of my body and everything, and I never smoked in my life. Never liked beer. I have a vodka and tonic one a day, and that's it.
I'm with you there. I'm with you.
Got a series of exercises I've been doing. I'm going on 19 years, and I missed 4 days out of 19 years. I start those first thing in the morning before I go any place. So I asked God to let me live to be 120, and I made him a promise. I'm keeping mine, and so far he's keeping his.
Well, good. I think you got, 3 years to go to hit the 100 mark. That's a century.
Yes. My driver's license is good until I'm 101 years old.
That's excellent. And Colonel, tell us a little bit about, you know a little bit about aviation.
Yeah.
You've been around and flown some pretty interesting aircraft, I'm sure. But
Right. I started flying in college in the civilian pilot training program. I got a license in a J2 Cub. Then we went up to a UPF-7 Waco, and I had 80 hours of flying time when I joined the Air Force. I joined on the 23rd June 1942. I would have joined a few days before that, but I took the test and everything, but I didn't have a birth certificate. And I got that on the 23rd of June and drove back over and signed up, and 10 days later I was in California going through pre-flight training, and then I went to Oxnard and got primary in a PT-17, from there to Bakersfield in a BT-13, and then out to Luke Field in AT-6, and I was in first class that they let fly P-40s in advanced flying. Mm-hmm. God is my co-pilot. Scott came through there, and I guess he talked to the training people, say, you need to let these guys start flying fighters in advanced flying. Mm-hmm. So, but I graduated there on 12 April 1943 as a second lieutenant. I ended up at Fort Myers, Florida, flying P-39s. I stayed there about 6 weeks. We moved up to Venice, and with the P-39s, and I had one squadron there, and I was held over as an instructor. So I stayed there flying P-39s, P-47s, P-40s, and I flew some Navy airplanes to tow in targets, and then we formed a fighter wing at Lakeland Air Force Base, Lakeland Drain Field, in October 1944, and had P-51s. I'd never even been close to a P-51. It took us down to Sarasota because they were closing that base, and I got in a P-51. The crew chief started, and I had 3 guys with me, and we took off, went back to Lakeland. Mm-hmm. I went with the area echelon, and my squadron commander was from here at Sebring. His family had a lot of groves. Waters was the name, Malcolm C. Waters. Everybody called him Muddy Waters. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he was in charge of the area echelon. We went out to California and loaded up 75 brand new P-51s on a baby carrier, went to Guam, and they were starting the war on Iwo Jima, so we flew up to Tinian and flew off old Jap fighter strip. And I finally ended up on Iwo Jima in March of 1945. You want to go on?
You learn a little bit about having to fly an airplane when somebody starts it up for you and says, take it to Lakeland.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you were doing that, Colonel?
Well, I was born on the 7th day of October, 1921. And October of 44, I was 23 years old. So when we went over to Iwo Jima, I was a flight leader, and I flew 13. We had a requirement of 15 missions on Iwo, but the war ended, and the last mission I flew was on the 10th of August, 1945, and I got credit for destroying one Jap at 25,000 feet, and the fifth, number 5, on 25 feet down low at another 0. I ended up I've shot down the last Jap airplane in World War II that day, 12:30 on 10th of August, and that became the last fighter race of World War II that day.
And it seems like just yesterday, doesn't it, Colonel?
Yeah, I did. I got a good memory. I don't forget dates or anything else, and I remember that. I get letters from people all over the world, and I send them a package back, 7 pictures with a one page write-up about me, and I write them a letter and everything else. Most people don't know much about aces. During World War II, World War I, Korea, and Vietnam, there was a total of 1,439 American fighter pilots that became aces. And to become an ace, you had to shoot down 5 airplanes in the air or more. Well, I got credit for destroying a total of 8 Jap fighters and damaging 7 more on 3 missions over Japan. By the time I got there, there was not a whole lot of Japs flying around the air, but I had good eyesight. I had 20/10 vision, and I could see airplanes before anybody else did. And the first time I ever ran into it, I ran into 6 Jap Franks head-on as the best one I had. I picked out the leader, and I shot him down. I pulled up in a tight loop. I ended up behind number 2. I was upside down when I shot him down, and I dropped off him and got number 3 there in less than 5 minutes. I shot all 6 of them. The last one is going in clouds smoking, and I followed him in the clouds, but I'd been busy, and I didn't know how high the mountains were or anything else, so I pulled back up out of the clouds. When I pulled back up, I looked out, because my left tank didn't drop off when I called drop external tanks. My tank was gone, and I had about 8 or 10 bullets holes in my left wing. Before I went into the clouds, I looked up to my right, and there's a yellowtail P-51 up there. He was shooting at this Jap, but he was hitting me. And when I got back to Iwo, my crew chief dug 50 caliber slugs out of the left wing, and we had a 98-gallon fuel tank right behind the pilot seat, and about 2 inches behind that, there was a hole about 6 or 8 inches in diameter where the bullets, 50 calibers, went through there and went into the wing, knocked out one of my guns and the compass. I came back from World War II, and I ended up going different places. I finally ended up down in Panama in 1946, and we had P-47s down there then. During World War II, I flew all of the fighters we had except the P-38. And I started flying jets down in Panama in September 1947. And from then on till I retired on the 1st July 1972, I flew all the jet fighters we had up to the F-15. And myself and 8 other guys met at Bowling after I came back from Vietnam in 1969. And we set up all the requirements for the F-15. It had to have a gun in it. It had some, you may have heard about the 111, supposed to be a fighter, but it was not a fighter, and they used it over in Vietnam mostly for electronic type warfare. But anyway, I flew a F-4 across the Pacific twice, 1966, 1968, and I flew a F-4 across the Atlantic twice. In July 1950, we came back in December of 1950. We flew from Shaw Air Force Base to Bangor, Maine, to Goose Bay, Labrador, BW1 in Greenland, Keflavik, Iceland, down to Prestwick, Scotland, or down to Manston. We flew out of Manston for 6 months and then came back home the same way. On the way back, that's when we started running into those high-speed winds. What do you call them now?
Headwinds.
Well, they had a special lane for it, but those winds got up to over 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, and the jet stream,
Yeah, jet streams. Well, I flew into some of those various times. But anyway, I ended up going to Vietnam. I was a vice commander of the wing at Da Nang, flying F-4s, and I stayed there. I flew 39 missions up north, and then General Beaumar, commander of 7th Air Force, gave me command of the 31st Wing at Tuiwa. I moved down there on the 1st of May, 1968. We had F-100s. I had 2 squadrons, one National Guard from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and one from Niagara Falls to come in there. I had 125 F-100s. I had the biggest wing in Southeast Asia.
Well, Colonel, I know you've been asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. Which one of the fighters that you flew would you call your favorite, most enjoyable, controllable aircraft?
Well, you may remember they came out with a P-40N, and it was only weighed, I think, around 5,500 pounds, had a lot of horsepower and everything. I used to, my ops officer used to get 2 of them, and he and I would go out at least once, twice a week and do nothing but dogfighting. But I enjoyed flying that one. It was not really a good combat airplane because it didn't have the speed of a P-51, but just for going out and doing acrobatics and dogfighting, it was #1.
Well, a friend of mine, Tom Richard, up in Kissimmee, he has a P-40N model.
Yeah.
And he calls it the American Dream, but he has flown Mustangs, and he says the P-40 by all other aircraft, by all other measures, is the finest flying aircraft that he's ever flown.
Yeah.
So there must be something to it if you go for the P-40 and
Well,
Tom.
it was so light.
Yeah.
And you could do anything in it with that airplane, and it had plenty of power. Yeah.
Well, Colonel, I know that you have a lot of other speaking engagements to go to, and we're going to kind of wrap this little interview up with the Florida Aviation Network. But we sure want to thank you for your time and to share some of your background with us, because there's not too many of you running around, and you're the last fighter ace of World War II.
Yeah, but not still living.
Yeah.
I was the last one that became an ace in World War II. There were 1,439 fighter aces. There's less than 33 still living. We have a reunion every year, and the last one I went to out at Dallas, Texas, there was only 6 of us there. And they presented us a Congressional Gold Medal on the 20th of May, 2015. There was 35 of us there, and 7 or 8 of those in wheelchairs.
Well, Colonel, we're going to be here in 2030, and I want to set you up on the interview schedule for 2030. So the year 2030, you're supposed to be here. We're going to talk to you again.
I'll be here.
All right, there you go. That's what we'll do. Thank you very much, Colonel.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap this up. I'm Ben Coleman, one of your hosts here at the Florida Aviation Network, and we'll see you next interview. Won't be as nearly dynamic unless somebody's older than 97 coming up to talk with us, but it'll be dynamic as well. Take it easy. Thank you, Colonel.
Okay.